everyone, we are live. It's happening. I'm Chris. Welcome. Happy Friday. I just polished off a tropical smoothie shake, so I got that out of the trash just now. Not gonna lie. Thank you for joining me. So let's see. A couple things just to start. It's been a wild week. Obviously, we have the Trump military parade through Washington tomorrow. We have Israel and Iran in, I don't know if it's a war, but a back and forth. We have the ongoing situation in Los Angeles. We have Alex Padilla. It's a week. So let's talk about it. If you are new to this chat, the way it works is ask a question in the chat and I'll answer. If one thing I do incentivize people to do, if you do want to make a donation to me, and I hope you do, to support independent journalism, which is what you will be doing, go to the little super chat button there, which is just the $ in the rectangle. If you make a donation, I'll bump your question up to the top. So subscribe to this channel, like this video. Those are two key things you can do. The other thing you can do is go over to my Substack, chriscillizza.substack.com. Check out everything I'm doing over there. There's some free content. There's some paid content. I hope you join in whatever way that you feel comfortable. What's that line from Coming to America? We like the kind of money that jangles, but we prefer the kind of money that folds. That's like my favorite line. Okay, anyway, here we are. Let's start from the top. The real Slim Shady 3000. Did Gavin Newsom seem extra presidential in his video address about immigration? Reminded you of George Bush's Oval Office addresses. Yeah, I thought that speech was like an 8-minute video, was really good. I'd also recommend to people the daily interview that Newsom gave to Michael Barbaro of the New York Times. That is I think, look, I made a video about this earlier this week and I stand by it. I think this is a moment for Gavin Newsom and he is leaning into it and taking advantage of it. Crises create opportunities in politics. It's the old Winston Churchill, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? That's what's happening here. I think and Newsom is absolutely, I think a lot of people who, I don't know if they ignored him, but they didn't think that highly of him. I think they're giving him a second look. I think they're like, oh, okay. And he's coming across as sort of tough and smart and willing to stand up to Trump. And I think that's a lot of what Democrats want going into 2028. So yeah, I think he's done himself a lot of good. Now, how long does that sustain? I honestly don't know. It could be a momentary thing. Maybe it's not a momentary thing. I mean, we'll find out. But yes, I thought his speech was good, and I recommend that interview on the Daily. Politics nerd. Will the Iran-Israel war escalate more? Seems like there was a big event and then things simmer down. This happened last year too. I don't know is the short answer. Trump today said that he thought Israel was going to do more. Iran has retaliated with drones. Did they retaliate with more? I don't know that it serves Iran to get into a full-fledged conflict with Israel because Israel's military is so strong and so well-funded and so well-organized. But, I don't know, right? I'm not a foreign policy expert. I'm certainly not an expert in that region of the world. But I tend to think you might be right, which is like it blows up. I should say the situation blows up and then it kind of goes back a little bit and then it goes, I do think there is some of that absolutely happening. We'll see though. I truly don't know the honest answer. Nostalgic American, from a totally neutral perspective, don't you find it eerie that the Army's military parade will look similar to those in North Korea? Well, I did make a video about this earlier in the week. And what I said there was the nations that regularly have military parades tend to be authoritarian and dictatorships, right? So it's North Korea, China, Russia, right? These are not countries that we as an American democracy want to have a lot in common with. Yes, Bastille Day is a thing every year in France. And yes, that's probably where Trump got the idea originally when he went to Bastille Day in 2017. But that's less a celebration of sort of the military than it is sort of like France more broadly. This feels like a Trump wanting to celebrate both himself and the military. But yeah, it's the visuals are a little bit eerie. Yes. Sam's still a Cillizza fan. Hey, Sam. Happy Father's Day. Can you give us your take on the state of the New York City mayoral race? Thanks, Sam, on the Father's Day wishes. I appreciate it. I actually forgot until like yesterday that it was Father's Day this weekend. State of the New York mayoral race. So the primary is not Tuesday, but a week from Tuesday. Look, I still think Cuomo is probably the favorite. I think Zoran, the state rep who is very liberal, democratic socialist, Mamdani is his last name. He's made up ground, no question. And it's ranked choice voting. So I'm not totally sure how that works. Does Cuomo get a lot of first places, but not a lot of second places? I don't know. I tend to think his money, name ID, the fact that he's kind of a known commodity probably helps him marginally. But I don't think he's the momentum candidate. I mean, I think he's hoping he can stay up here rather than start to fade, but I don't think he's going up. But I still would, I guess if I was betting, which I don't, but if I was betting, I think I'd still go with Cuomo. Pooh Boy Dave, do you think the smoke in the DC area is a result of climate change? I mean, I've seen haze, not that I've seen smoke. I mean, I think there were wildfires in Canada that the smoke was being blown down into the mid-Atlantic, but I guess we could have a longer conversation about fires and climate, but Dan W. Dan, thank you for your donation. Very kind of you. Dan says, regarding Terry Moran, Stephen Miller story, how can you be both independent and say Stephen Miller has extreme views of the everyday citizen? Maybe it's my own bias, but Stephen Miller has scary views. Look, I think you can elucidate. I don't think you can say exactly what Terry said about Stephen Miller. I think you can say, because what Terry said about, and keep your job at ABC News, I should say. I mean, of course, you can say what you want about Stephen Miller, but and keep your job at ABC News, because basically what Terry said is like, Stephen Miller is a hate monger. Now, I know plenty of people watching this believe that Stephen Miller is a hate monger, but you're not a journalist, right? You're not an independent journalist, ostensibly. You don't work for a big legacy media company. Terry Moran did. And I think what he could have said is like, look, Stephen Miller has elucidated a number of views on immigration in particular that are outside the societal norms in America and are not popular with a majority of the American public, right? I mean, like, I think there are ways that because I think what he was getting at is like, Stephen Miller's views are extreme. Okay. Show how they're extreme. Don't tell how they're extreme. Show how they're extreme. Show polling. Show times when Miller has advocated, and I believe he has, for legals, people who are here legally in this country to be deported. Show, don't tell. That's my basic view. I'm not offering a judgment on Stephen Miller other than to say, if you think he is intolerant, show that his policies that he has supported, comments he has made, don't just attack him and say he feeds on hate. That would be my advice. I hope that makes sense. No one has a donation for me, thank you, and asks, where is Congress? Are they not a co-equal branch of government? They are a co-equal branch of government, no question. They have largely ceded power to Donald Trump. There's no question about that. The Republicans are in control of the Senate and the House. That's not news to anyone who pays attention to this stuff. And I think they basically said, we're going to do what Donald Trump wants unless it's like wildly radical, because we don't want to cross Donald Trump and we want to get reelected. And he won in 2024 running on a bunch of these things. That's the sort of best look for congressional Republicans, which is to say, we're not just a rubber stamp for Trump, but he ran on these things, he won on these things, so we're going to try to make these things happen. But yes, they have ceded a significant amount of power, particularly as it relates to government spending. Again, the power of the purse rests with Congress. And yet we had DOJ getting rid of the USAID, getting rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, getting rid of the Department of Education, right? Like all of these things that are really not the executive's purview. And yeah, I don't think it's good. Let's see. We've got a bunch of donations coming in. Thank you, everyone. And let me just say this about donations. Donations help me do this job. They help me fund what I'm doing. They help me buy lights and cameras and microphones and keep the lights literally on. So if you're making a donation, know that it is coming to me, and I am putting that back into the journalism, whether it's on Substack or here. You also, if you don't want to go through YouTube, that's fine. Go to buymeacoffee.com. I have an account there. You can donate there, and that way all of it comes directly to me. Eric Mays. Eric, thank you for your donation. Eric says, happy Father's Day, Chris. Okay, thanks, man. In Richmond, Virginia, seeing tons of ads for Winsome Sears and very little for Spanberger. Are we still thinking Spanberger is the fave? I do. This is a Virginia governor's race. Eric, I do. Look, I think Winsome Sears, who, for people who don't know, is the Republican nominee for governor in Virginia. She's got to get her name ID up. I know she was the lieutenant governor of the state, but like people don't really know her. Spanberger is a little bit more known in that media market because her old congressional district reaches down to that media market. But don't assume just because one candidate is spending money in June on TV ads that they're winning. I still think that this is Spanberger's race to lose. Doesn't mean she won't lose. Doesn't mean she can't lose. But to me, don't put too much into the ad spend. I hope that makes sense, at least right now. Richard Cohn. Richard, thank you for your donation. That's so incredibly kind of you. And didn't even have a question. Thank you, my friend. Anthony Cabrera. Anthony, good to hear from you. And thank you as always for your donations. Anthony says, what do you think is the future for Republicans like Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis if Trump and the Vance administration sucks? Because one of them come in with an I told you so mentality. So in the normal political world, Anthony, yes, that message might even work, like the buyer's remorse message. Like, I told you that that they were going to cost us the House or cost us the Senate or whatever, right? And now you need to get behind me. But this is not normal political world, at least on the Republican side, because I really do think the best way to understand Trump is as a cult of personality, not like as a political party in any meaningful way. Like they do what Trump wants them to do. So I don't know if there's ever going to be a time when he actually gets blamed by the base of the party for some of the bad things that happened to the party. Like maybe, but I don't know that's going to happen. So the future for Haley and DeSantis, I think, isn't much of a future. I mean, to me, 2028 really is going to be a Trumpy year. You know, it's going to be like who can be most like Trump? Because again, unless his numbers fall in among Republicans, which I haven't really seen, unless they fall among Republicans, the 2028 race is largely going to be like a who's most like Donald Trump race. 2032, maybe that's different. You know what I mean? Like I could see scenarios where that changes, but not in the near term. GJ963, thank you for the donation. Much appreciated. No question, but thank you for the donation. NATO Power, thank you for the donation. Chris, friend from Canada here. What have you thought about newish Prime Minister Carney's relationship with Trump so far? It's all the news here up north. Well, I think that Mark Carney handled his first meeting with Trump really well, which is he said what he needed to say for Canada, which was, look, Canada's not for sale. But he didn't try to embarrass Trump. He didn't try to make it a huge issue with Trump. Like, you know what I mean? Like he just kind of made his point and then he moved on. And I think that's really, really smart because I think with Trump, you don't want to embarrass him or make him look bad publicly because he will hold that against you. So I think Carney is done. I haven't heard much about him lately in America. That's probably a good thing for him and for Canada. Jack Moon. Hello, Chris. Since I don't have a question this week, I'll follow up some of my former questions, such as appearing on the Majority 54 podcast and the best presidents and politicians on foster care. Thank you, Jack. The foster care thing is hard for me to answer. Appearing on the Majority 54 podcast, haven't heard of it, but I'm happy to check it out. Brett Green. Hey, Chris, what do you think happens next for David Hogg and the DNC since they ousted him? Will Ken Martin stay as chair? So for people who aren't following this, David Hogg, who was a kid when Parkland, there was the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman High School in Parkland, Florida. A number of his classmates were killed. He became a spokesman for gun control. He then became a broader spokesman. He's now 25, and he was elected a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee earlier this year. That ended Wednesday when the committee voted to revote on its vice chairs. Now, it's basically, they did this on a technicality, but the truth is it's aimed at David Hogg, right? Hogg had started this group where he was raising money to beat older Democratic incumbents. And that obviously roiled the waters because he is a vice chair of the DNC. So I think he's out, never to be heard from again, at least in the terms of the modern day DNC. Ken Martin is the current chair of the DNC. I think he probably should go too. I don't think he will. I think Ken Martin's belief is like, well, I spent this first 6 months dealing with this David Hogg problem, and now I don't have to deal with it anymore, and so things are going to be good. I think he's lost some confidence with people in the party about handling this stuff. So let's see. But Ken Martin will stay for now. And part of that's also, by the way, because there's no one to tell him to go. There's no president of the United States who's a Democrat, right? There's no VP, there's no nominee in waiting. So sometimes it's like, well, there's no one to tell me to go, so I guess I'll stay. Patrick Murray. Hey, Chris, are you going to Trump's military birthday parade in D.C. this weekend? I am not attending the parade. I am doing TV tomorrow from 7 to 8:30, allegedly, on News Nation, where I'm a paid contributor. So I'll probably comment on it, but I'm not going. I'm not a big parade guy in general. Human NC. Hey, Chris, thanks for doing this again. Do you think Democrats will move right or left on economics between now and 2028? That's sort of hard to say. I mean, I think Democrats would be wise to get a little more populist in their kind of rhetoric. Excuse me. I'm not sure if that is right or left necessarily, but like, I think they would do well to put the working class much more in the focus and try to solve for that over and over again. I think that's better for them. So yeah, I don't know is the answer, but we'll see. Let's see. Mitchell Buck. Mitchell, sorry, your question is kind of jumbled. I'm trying to read it. Try to put it back in there. Pat Coit, I wonder what America would look like as a parliamentary republic with about 6 to 9 parties in Congress. That would be fascinating, Pat. Fascinating. I don't know, but it's interesting. Sam Schmidt, hey, Chris, one of the big takeaways from the election was the red shift in a lot of blue states, right? New Jersey, Illinois, New York. Do you think the Trump administration's actions so far have significantly altered this support? It's hard for me to say. He did only lose like New Jersey by 6 points. He lost Illinois by 11, right? And those are significant improvements by as compared to how he did in 2016 and even 2020. Is what he has done changed that coalition? I think he got a lot of Hispanic votes. And the poll numbers I have seen suggest he's lost some of that Hispanic support. Now, has he lost all of it? Probably not. I mean, no, he hasn't lost all of it, but like his support is down a little bit in that group. Young people, he got a lot of young votes. His support's down a little bit there. So, if the election was today, he'd probably do a little less well with those groups and a little less well in some of these really blue states. I don't know that he'd lose, but I think he'd do less well. So yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Let's see. Pat Coit, I guess to add on to Sam's questions, how much do you think Trump's current actions will impact his midterm numbers, and will the Democrats be able to pull a win in the Senate and the House? So my guess, so Trump's at like 43-ish% approval right now. My guess is he stays around there. I could see him dropping a couple points. I could probably maybe see him going up a few points to like 45, but he's going to be, I think, in the mid 40s at best. At the midterm, which I think means the Democrats will very likely take the House. They only need 3 seats to do it. And the Senate is harder. You need 4-seat pickup. You need to net 4 seats if you're Republican. 5 if you're Democrats, because Republicans have a 4-seat majority, plus they have the tie-breaking vote in J.D. Vance, the vice president. So a 5-seat pickup, given the map in the Senate, you'd really have to have the national playing field be really tilted in Democrats' favor. I mean, it could be, but I guess I'm a little skeptical that would happen. But yeah, I expect Democrats to take the House in 2026, just because history suggests they will when you have a president under 50% popularity. And I think that's probably where Trump will be. Just wanted to welcome people who are filing in. Thank you for coming. Make sure you do a couple things. Hit subscribe. That's the easiest thing if you haven't already. Just hit subscribe. We are so close to 100,000. We're at like 97,000 something. I haven't looked lately, but we are so close. We're going to get there. I'm so excited for it, but let's get there sooner rather than later. So hit that. Second, give me the old, here it is. Give me the old thumbs up. Like this. That helps. Like this video. It helps my other videos get out there. The other thing you can do if you want to support me, go to the super chat, which is just a rectangle with a money sign in it. If you want to donate to me, to independent journalism, I'll bump your question up and I'll make sure it gets asked. Speaking of which, Anthony Cabrera. Anthony, thank you for another donation. Anthony says, have you heard of the podcast Left, Right, and Center? You would make a great guest on it. I love listening to independent podcast media. Any you would recommend outside of you, of course. You know what, Anthony, hold on. I'm going to write this one down. Left, right, and center. So I will look that up. I'm always looking for new podcasts to be on. Ones I would recommend. Obviously most of the independent creators out there, unfortunately, to my mind, are partisans. They're journalists, but they're partisan journalists. They hate Trump or they love Trump, and they pretty much do that. So there's a lot out there, and a lot of it's good. But in the middle, Tara Palmieri, she has a YouTube channel. She also writes on Substack. Politics by a guy named Justin Robert Young, who mostly, I think he has a YouTube channel too, but is on Substack. His is all video. It's like a video podcast. I really like him too. Trying to think if there's anybody else that jumps out. I mean, I got a bunch of partisan people that I read and like, but they're not trying to call it down the middle, right? So anyway, but that's a good question. Thank you for it. Let's see. Mike Witt. Hey, Mike. Mike, thank you for your donation. Mike says, hey, Chris, as a lifelong Democrat, my dream scenario for 28 is Buttigieg or Shapiro for president and AOC going for Schumer's spot in the Senate. Interesting. So, yes, Chuck Schumer is up for re-election in 2028. I don't think he's going to ultimately run. He'd be in his mid-70s, I think, at that point. Maybe he does. But I think AOC wants to run for president, not for Senate. Now, that doesn't mean she will. Maybe she rethinks it. Maybe the Senate is more appealing to her, whatever. But I do think right now, if I had to guess, I'd say she's running for president. And I think along with Buttigieg, she's probably, and Shapiro does it, probably the three frontrunners, at least at the moment. I mean, again, it's June 2025. So, take it with a grain of salt. But yeah. I'm interested to see that, to see what comes of that. But look, I think it would be smart to have Shapiro on the ticket one way or another, again, because you need Pennsylvania. This is like my whole Pennsylvania argument from the last election. So I don't know if he'll wind up on there, but I think it would be good for Democrats, smart for Democrats to put him on there. Folks, just as a reminder, make sure you post your questions in here. Excuse me, in the chat so that I can answer as many as I can. Let's see, just going through. John C., are we closer to World War III or a civil war? I mean, do I have to choose between those? I mean, I guess we're closer to a civil war than we are to World War III. I don't think we're close to either, though. Nathan C., favorite spots to eat in DC. Nathan, I'm gonna expose my daddom to you. I live in Northern Virginia. I don't go eat out in DC all that much. We go to our same spots that we like in Northern Virginia, but they're not fancy. I have a 16-year-old boy and a 12-year-old boy. Like, I'm not going out to like a $300 meal, and I'm eating a lot of stuff on the road because I'm driving to and from sports stuff. So I wish I could offer you up like a thing, but it'd be from 25 years ago because that's the last time I was like regularly eating out in DC. Let's see. Jennifer Jewett, how was Elon Musk sidelined? I think it was his speaking out on HR1. Were there other factors? Any hopes of sidelining Stephen Miller? No, Stephen Miller, I don't think is going to be sidelined because I think he understands how to stay in good with Donald Trump. Elon, why was he sidelined? Because I think he was getting Trump bad press and he was making demands about people he wanted put in jobs, whether it was NASA or other things, and he was not playing nice with the other cabinet secretaries, right? There's a Washington Post reported on a physical altercation where Musk kind of rammed into the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. So it was kind of like the juice was no longer worth the squeeze, Jennifer. And, I think that was always going to happen. But I think Trump was kind of like, all right, time to go. Chris Vetter, what do you think of Kristi Noem's speech yesterday before the Padilla incident? She implied that the administration is taking over California from its Democratic elected leaders. Yeah, that kind of got overshadowed, right, Chris, in all of this. So what Noem was saying before Padilla interrupted her and started asking questions, and obviously then he got taken to the ground and blah, 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 blah. And we know that's a huge thing. And if you want to read my thoughts on it, go to Substack. I tried to write and explain it as best I could from my perspective. But in her speech, you're right. She basically says, we're going to stay here for as long as it takes to restore order or whatever, because your leaders can't do it. And, that is something that I think should raise eyebrows, right? Because their leaders, whether it's the mayor of Los Angeles or the governor of California, they were elected to represent the people. Now, I guess the federal government can come in and say, you're doing a bad job, but like, that's kind of up to the constituents to say that. So yeah, I thought that was I'm glad you highlighted that because I think that's that's a key takeaway that got lost. Michael Gates, hey Chris, do you think Trump is pissed off at Bibi Netanyahu for undermining his talks with Iran by attacking them? So I read in Axios, and this is not my reporting, but I read in Axios this morning that there are several national security officials saying that the White House was urging Israel not to attack publicly, but privately were saying that it was just fine. I don't know if that's right, but if that's right, then no, Trump is probably not pissed off because he knew it was all happening. But yeah. Razor X999 says, Gavin has so much baggage from California, nothing can overcome it. That's a question, right? I mean, I think Newsom is having a moment right now, but a moment right now in June 2025 doesn't mean you're going to be the nominee in November 20 or in, the winter of 2028 and be the president in November of 2028. Like Newsom will have to answer for stuff he did as mayor of San Francisco and governor of California. No question. He's got a long record. And honestly, in politics, you don't want to have a long record. You want to have as short a record as humanly possible so that people can't pick through it. Sam Schmidt. Sam, thank you so much for your donation. Sam asks this. Thoughts on Greg Abbott preemptively deploying the Texas National Guard ahead of suspected protests seems purely inflammatory. So what's so hard about this, Sam, is so much of it feels to me at this point like what you think of that depends on which party you're in. If you're a Republican and you support Greg Abbott, you're going to say he's just trying to keep public safety at top of mind. If there's no violence or anything, great, but we want to be ready if there are, and he doesn't want to be taken by surprise. If you don't like Greg Abbott and don't like the Republican Party, you're going to say this is an incitement, right? As soon as you put people with guns on the streets, military, the protests are going to react poorly to that. I don't know where I land on it, to be totally honest. I'm not trying to have it both ways or anything. Like I don't know. I can see arguments on both sides of it. I hope there isn't violence. That's my big worry about tomorrow. And I just really, really, really hope there isn't violence. Razor X99, 999. Razor, thank you. That's an incredibly kind donation and very much appreciated. And I can assure you goes directly to supporting me doing this kind of journalism and analysis. Razor says, I don't agree with your perspective on most everything, but I think you are authentic. Future congrats on 100,000. So this is what I'm solving for, people. I'm not solving for, thank you for getting it, Razor. I'm not solving for you agreeing with me on everything. You shouldn't agree with me on everything. You might not agree with me on much. What I'm solving for is you believe I'm coming from an authentic, honest place where I'm trying to give you my best analysis of things that are happening in politics as they're happening. It is not always going to be right. I do not have a monopoly on good ideas or right analysis. I've spent a long time doing this. I think I have a sense for what works and what doesn't, but things change. The rules of politics change. And so, that's just the reality. So I'm doing my best to be authentic. Thank you for using that word. I think that's really, really, really helpful of you knowing that. Let's see. Rosalie Pueblo, I hope Boeing can PR the heck out of the Air India disaster. I haven't forgotten the 737 MAX disaster. Fair point. Jody Oaks, hey, Chris, do you think there'll be any pushback from anyone in either party about the Alex Padilla arrest yesterday? Well, just to be clear, Jody, I don't think he was arrested. I don't even think he was detained. I think he was removed, and I know he was handcuffed, but he was removed, and that was it, I think. So will there be political pushback? I think you've already seen a ton of it. Democrats are insisting this is, an example of Donald Trump's authoritarian leanings and how he's going to make it a police state. Republicans are saying this guy came in and shouted and people didn't know he was a senator and he was interrupting a press briefing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it already feels to me like people have lined up in their partisan end zones. As to how much will matter, I just don't know. Michael Stravelli. Hi, Chris. Really appreciate your relatively objective perspective in times like this. I know it can be hard when so much of it is about morality. It is hard for me. I got a note from someone yesterday who I don't really know well, but I know of, and about this Alex Padilla thing. And they were like, you're not analyzing this in good faith. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, yes, I am. Like, I don't have any ulterior motive here. Like I'm trying to get a job in the Trump administration or like be a part of the resistance. Like, no, like, You don't have to agree with me. And in fact, that's totally fine. That's part of how this all works. But don't say that I'm operating in bad faith. Like I'm not. Like I don't know how else to say it. Brendan Fleming. Brendan, thank you as always for your donation. That's very kind of you. Brendan says, two Democratic candidates I think have potential but don't get a ton of coverage. Maybe that's a good thing. Are Westmore and Andy Beshear, especially Beshear being a popular Dem governor in a red state. Would love your thoughts. Well, Brendan, first of all, thank you as always for the donation. I agree with you that I'm not sure getting a ton of media attention right now is like a guarantor of anything. I mean, I think like Newsom's gotten a nice little run of attention here in the last couple of days, but like, I don't know what that means in the long run. I do think both of the people you identified have real potential. I think if I had to choose between which one of them we'd be talking about in 2.5 years from now, I think I'd choose Westmore, the governor of Maryland. More liberal record, African-American guy. He's going to be a 2-term governor of Maryland unless something happens. I mean, I assume he's going to get reelected next November. It's a very Democratic state. And really articulate, really interesting guy. He's trying to moderate a little interesting on some social stuff. Now Andy Beshear, I agree. I think Democrats would be really smart to put that guy on the ticket. Got elected twice in Kentucky, which ain't an easy thing. The problem is I don't know if Andy Beshear can win a primary because he's probably a little too moderate. The positions he had to take to get elected governor of Kentucky as a Democrat are not the positions that like the liberal left holds. Are there enough moderate, centrist, right-leaning Democrats out there? I don't think so in a primary, but maybe we'll find out. You snooze, you news. Would the Democratic National Committee block Mark Cuban from being their candidate? I don't think they would. I wrote about Mark Cuban over at my Substack this week, basically saying you should take him seriously for a couple reasons. I'll tell you a few. He's rich. He's famous. Basically totally well-known. He has a signature issue, which is lowering the cost of prescription drugs. He started a company that is aimed at bringing transparency and lower cost. And we now live in a post-Trump or a Trump and soon to be post-Trump political environment, which is like, I think people want politicians who aren't politicians. You know what I mean? I think they want people running for president who aren't like anybody who's ever run for president in their party before. And Cuban certainly fits that bill. Yeah, I mean, we'll see, but I would not be surprised. And I don't think the DNC would I don't think the DNC would block him. Luke Martin, if two things are bad, but one is objectively more bad than the other, are both sides still at fault? I mean, I see you're talking about the Alex Padilla thing, I assume, Luke. And yeah, I mean, because like what I always do is like a blame pie, right? So if there's a whole pie, where does the blame go? If you're saying that, and I think you probably are, I think you're saying, hold on. Let's go to voicemail. Sorry, someone was calling. What you're saying, I think, is, yeah, sure, it wasn't great. Padilla was trying to cause a scene. He interrupted, etc. But the way that he was treated afterward was worse. I agree. Totally agree. But does that mean he's blameless? No, because like people say to me, like, well, he's just doing his job. Well, sort of, but like his job is to represent his people, but his job is not to like go into a press briefing. It wasn't even a press conference, go into a press briefing and start shouting. Like, so I would say I said 70% the law enforcement, Noam's law enforcement people's fault, 30% Padilla. I could be convinced 80-20, but he clearly played a role. I mean, he was being at least somewhat antagonistic, right? I mean, now again, you could say like, well, that's what the situation demanded. Okay, that's fine. But like, he had to expect there to be some response. So I just don't think it was, yes, I think what law enforcement did is worse than what Padilla did, but I don't think Padilla did nothing and is blameless. Does that make sense? Does not equal. Good evening from Tokyo. I should be in bed, but I'm updating my tablet. Yes. Hello, Tokyo. Thank you. That is very kind of you. Dan W. Dan, thank you for your donation. Dan says that's a fair answer. Thanks for the level year. I do what I can. H, have any of the former reporters like yourself, Chuck Todd, Jim Acosta, Don Lemon, ever thought about getting together and make one big YouTube channel more stronger together? I think the issue there is like Chuck and I could probably do that, but Jim and Don, they're a little bit more in the anti-Trump space than I am. So my guess is they would want to make, more of kind of like that Midas touch feeling videos than I would. So I mean, I like the idea, but we're not kind of, I don't know, we're not like in that same exact space, if that makes sense. I hope it does. TubeCat 25.99. Do you know what Senator Padilla's question to Kristi Noem was trying to ask as he was being dragged out of the room? Something about the number of J6ers at DHS, maybe J6ers on our detail. I don't. I think he was trying to point out that like she was standing in front of a screen that was like showing like people who were illegally in this country and the crimes they had committed. And I think the point he wanted to make was Trump had pardoned people who had committed crimes as bad or worse, I think. But again, he didn't get much of his question out. AV. Hey, CC, what is the vibe in DC? That's a lot of abbreviations right now with all the tanks and stuff coming around for Trump's birthday. Is it surreal having all these military forces running around town? So again, important to note, I live in Northern Virginia. I don't see any of these. I mean, I see on social media, but I don't see like regularly these tanks and all that stuff coming around. The images tomorrow, I think, are going to be pretty striking, like tanks rolling through the streets of Washington, D.C. We have not had a military parade since 1991 in this town, and that was to celebrate the end of the Gulf War. So I haven't seen a ton of it, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't love the imagery. Mike Witt, Mike, thank you for your additional donation. Very appreciated. Mike says, I'm going to a peaceful protest in the small town I live in tomorrow. I'm a little concerned about the protests getting violent in bigger cities tomorrow. Any protests in DC planned? So, you know, Mike, it's all these protests are being organized, or these counter protests are being organized. Counter marches are being organized under the No Kings, this like big, broad umbrella group. And they have made a conscious choice not to hold a counter protest in DC because I think they were concerned about potential clashes and violence. So there'll be some in and around DC, but not in DC proper. I really hope that people can be peaceful at all this stuff. I know it's hard because I know emotion runs really high. I get that. I understand, but I worry about it. Yeah. Dragonfire. Spam Burger is a name. It's Span Burger, Berger, but it does kind of sound like Spam Burger. Yes. Well said. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through, making sure I get everybody. Sang-Hoon Park says, hi. Hello. Mitchell Buck, would you appear on the Cuomo podcast? I think he tries to stay in the middle. Absolutely, Mitchell. I really like Chris. He actually just texted me. I don't know what it was about. Hold on. Yeah, he just texted me. I really like him. He was a real advocate for me when I was at CNN. Obviously, neither of us are there anymore. He's at News Nation. I'm a News Nation contributor. Yes, absolutely. I would do, if Chris asked me to do anything, I mean, anything journalistically, I would do it. Like, I'm not going to like vote for his brother or something. Of course, I don't live in New York, so that wouldn't matter. But yes, I'm a fan. Sang-Hoon Park says, what's the best move Gavin, Karen Bass, etc. can make in Los Angeles, considering the local population, me included, are very much upset and are actively opposing to what the military ICE are doing here? The best way that this can end, I think, for Democrats generally and Democrat elected officials, is for it to stay peaceful. Right. And I think that's been the case the last few nights. I think it was Sunday night where we had some of those cars burning, and those images obviously were pushed around TV all day the next day and the day after that. I think peaceful protest is fine. I think large peaceful protest sends a message. Like, again, if you are not violent and you see, and there are obvious scenes of law enforcement getting violent with nonviolent people, I think that turns this dynamic. Right now, what you have is, I think a lot of people who don't pay close attention to this, who don't live in LA, who don't live in California, look at this and they see like people in masks, cars burning, looting, and they're like, well, we do need law enforcement. But if what you see is peaceful protests, no looting, no cars burning, no things being thrown at the cops, and the cops being heavy-handed, that would change things. Yeah. Let's see. Patrick Murray, thoughts on the Karen Reed trial closing day? Patrick, I'm sorry. I know that it's a thing because every time I go into youtube.com/news, it's like updates on the Karen Reed trial, but I don't know anything about it. George Murillo. George, thank you for your donation. That's very kind of you and much, much appreciated. Let's see, just scrolling here. Robert, fake last name. I see what you did there. What do you think about openly mentioning your own political beliefs versus trying to keep them in the background? Is being upfront about your own beliefs a requirement to regaining trust in the media? I'm a little bit. I don't know. I think I'm an oddball in journalism in that, like, I was never into politics before I got into political journalism. Like I wasn't like an activist type who became a journalist. Like I never really cared about politics until I started covering them. So I've always looked at it through this kind of journalistic lens. I've never really had like, oh, I believe this. I mean, you shouldn't murder people. I have some beliefs, but I don't have like very strongly held beliefs on every issue. So it's a little easier for me. My basic belief is like, I think we should acknowledge that in most newsrooms in this country, 85 to 90% of the people who cover this stuff vote for Democrats. You know, do I think that that means that they are hopelessly biased? No. But I think we should acknowledge it. I mean, in the same way that I think if it was 90-10 the other way, we should acknowledge it. So I'm a big believer in transparency to get us to where we need to go. I don't know. Zach, hey, Chris, this is my first time catching one of your live streams. Welcome, my friend. We haven't been hearing much of Canada becoming a state anymore. Has Trump gotten the message or moved on to new shiny objects? Yeah. I mean, I think he was just trolling Justin Trudeau, right? Canada's obviously not going to become a state. And I made a video about this. Even if it did become a state, that would be terrible for Republicans because it's a Democratic leaning place and it would be a zillion electoral votes that would help elect a Democrat president. So it doesn't make any sense. It's like, not going to happen. I think he just likes to sort of, poke the bear. And with Mark Carney, he's a little less willing to poke the bear, or he's trying to give Mark Carney a chance, or he's moved on to other things. Who the hell knows? Ben Padavina. Chris, what do you make of the Quinnipiac and AP polls this week showing Trump down 13 and 21 points respectively? Do you think this will impact his strategy going forward? So, Ben, I did see the Quinnipiac poll where he's at 38 now. And I guess you mean down 13 from his high point. I don't know. I really wonder how much. I think he lives in this bubble. I mean, I know he lives in a bubble where he kind of just sees the polling that people show him, which is positive. He doesn't really want to see bad news. I mean, who among us does, but he has that filtered out. So I don't know how much he even sees of that stuff. I mean, look, I will say, I think he's going to stay in the low 40s with job approval. I don't think he drops into the mid 30s. I think that Q poll showing him at 38 might be about a low point that he gets to because he still has so much Republican support. But yeah, I mean, his poll numbers are not great. Now, does he see them? I don't know. Easy name 123. Easy, thank you for your donation. Easy says, your channel is awesome, but shows like Rogan, Schultz, and even Lex Friedman push fake neutrality and launder Trump's image and do more harm than good. That's what's hard, right? Like neutrality a lot of times is in the eye of the beholder. So it's like, I desperately try to be independent and call balls and strikes no matter what uniform the batter at the plate is wearing. I really try to do that. I stay committed to it. But I know there are people on this chat, people on the YouTube channel, people on Substack who are like, Chris is a Trump lover. Chris is a Trump hater, whatever. I don't think I am, but I don't think Joe Rogan thinks he's like some big partisan. I know people think he is. It's just hard. It's a challenge. By the way, folks, we have 270 people on here, but only 100 thumbs up. Just go and like this for me. Do me that favor. I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to get to people who have not asked questions. So just if you think I'm skipping over you, I promise I'm not skipping over you. I'm just trying to get to people who ask questions, who have not asked questions. Let's see. Aldo Mourinho, July 9th is on the way with no deals. Are we getting high tariffs and no relief? No, we will not. I know that's when the 90-day pause runs out. No, I cannot imagine that Donald Trump is going to put reciprocal tariffs in again. I'd be stunned if that was the case. I mean, of course, I guess he could, but I think it's very, very, very unlikely. I think he'll just kick the can down the road until they do make deals. But you're right. Look, Donald Trump said 90 deals in 90 days. Or Peter Navarro, Trump's trade guy, said, we're going to make 90 deals in 90 days. That has not happened. Sly Fox, thanks for your even-handedness in covering things like the Padilla scuffle. Apparently, you're both siding fascism for pointing out he was looking for a TV hit but should not have been roughed up. I know. The response to this stuff is frankly a little depressing. The point I made on X and then I made in a Substack post later was, look, I think both of these things are true. Padilla was clearly looking for a moment, right? He saw that he could confront Noam. That would be good for him. Good, like the idea that like he was doing it because it's his job. I mean, sort of, but like, again, as I said, his job is not necessarily to like barge into a press conference and interrupt someone or a press briefing and interrupt someone. So he clearly had an agenda. The Noam people clearly handled it poorly. They could have de-escalated. They did not de-escalate, right? Like if they didn't know he was a senator at the start, once he said, I'm a U.S. senator, they could have de-escalated. And by the way, I don't know that you should treat anyone like that, right? U.S. senator or not. So yeah, like there is blame to go around. I'm not trying to both sides it and cover up fascism or whatever. It's really challenging. Really challenging. Jay Jordan 00 says Schumer is definitely past his prime. I know a lot of Democrats agree with you, Jay. I'm wrong. Brad David points out I gave Republicans too many seats. Yes, you're right, Brad. They have 53, Democrats have 47. So they need a net 4 pickup to take control. Sorry. Thank you. Pat Coit says Cory Booker or Michael Bennet will be the Senate leader. Opinion. Well, Michael Bennet is running for governor of Colorado this in 2026. So I don't think he's going to be a Senate leader because I think he's probably going to be governor of Colorado. But Cory Booker is interesting. The ultimate nightmare scenario in LA. Andor level massacre scene, street by street on CNN. Country starts to disintegrate like toilet paper. 0.00001%. And we are back. I don't know what that was. That was, by the way, I'm switching over to the other computer. For people who are familiar with this chat, you know this happens from time to time. Sorry about that. I got your connection is weak, even though there's no reason for my connection to be weak. All right, I'm back. Let's see. Let's get to some people here. So hold on. Mike Witt. Mike says, and Mike, thank you for your donation. Mike says, your opinion, Chris, what happened to Bill Maher in the last 10 years? Seems like he's really changed his views and is really leaning right lately. I don't know. I think Bill Maher's always been a contrarian, Mike. And I think, he kind of takes contrarian views. I don't think it's any different than that. I actually kind of like Bill Maher because one thing I would say about Bill Maher is he's not afraid to take positions on stuff that he knows he's going to take a raft of S for. Which I kind of like. Like, I think we can't be cowed into not saying what we think because I think that starts to arrest free speech. Sam Schmidt. Sam, thank you for your donation. Sam says, thanks for your balls and strikes approach. However, I've never been more pessimistic for our future political discourse. I agree. Sam, the reaction to the Alex Padilla thing yesterday really depressed me because it was like either your only options are you're condoning fascism, because the police state is arresting a senator. He didn't get arrested, but you get my point. Or you are condoning lawlessness because this guy like lunged at Kristi Noem. It's like, no, like there's stuff in between there, and like, I just wish we could sometimes talk about that. I'm very pessimistic about it too. Pat Coit says, I like News Nation. It seems like a real centrist news platform. That's what we're going for, Pat. I'm glad you see that way. Sebastian G. I don't mean to start a political argument, but man, do I wish that Donald Trump was impeached. You do not wish Donald Trump was impeached if you want, it's not going to happen. So Republicans control the House and the Senate. Let's say Democrats control the House in 2027. Yeah, they might impeach Donald Trump, but he's not getting convicted by the Senate, and that's just going to provide more fuel for the fire. Cactus Bravo says, channel is growing fast. It is going fast. Thank you. Let's see. Julio J. Chris, sometimes you refer to current political dynamics as not normal, but we also had more of the same for 10 years now. Is this the new normal, or do you expect regression to the mean? That's a great point. Yeah, I think this is the new normal. That's why I don't dismiss people like Mark Cuban as potential candidates, because why not? Donald Trump has not just been president. He's also in his second term. Dinga House. How do you think the military parade will be viewed overall? Does it matter how Trumpy things get? I don't know. I mean, look, if you don't like Donald Trump, you're going to hate it. If you love Donald Trump, you're going to love it. I don't know how the average person who isn't super following politics cares. My guess is like most people like patriotism and they'll like that aspect of it. Again, I don't love tanks rolling down the nation's capital, just as a general rule. Patrick Murray said the stream is starting to turn glitchy for me. Yes, I know. That's right before it froze, Patrick. I don't know. That's very weird. Missile 18 says, great job as always, Chris. Thank you. Sly Fox says, I thought I forgot to pay the internet bill for a second. LOL. Yeah, no, that was me. Mark a lot. My Chrome crashed. Pretty impressive. Chris can crash my computer. The power. That's right. Watch out. Let's see. I'm just going through a few more. Sunhaven Lane, congratulations on 97,000. Really enjoying your take on things. Thank you for your fairness. I try. Thank you for your support. Spread the word. Singh says, why can't we celebrate 250 years of the Army? Yeah, I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with celebrating 250 years of the Army. That it coincides with Donald Trump's birthday, and that he is having a military parade in Washington, D.C., I think a little debatable, but like yeah. Daniel Kent says, with Newsom, he's having Steve Bannon on his podcast. Yeah, Steve Bannon's already been on the podcast, and Charlie Kirk, another big Trump guy, has also been on the podcast. So he's trying to moderate somewhat, but like maybe now he won't because he is like now seen as this foil to Trump. I honestly don't know. All right. Let me end there because I'm worried that the glitchiness in the video is going to come back. So I closed all my tabs. I'm not totally sure why it's glitchy, but thank you as always for being here. We try to do it every Friday. Sometimes my schedule doesn't allow it, but most times it does. Thank you for being here. If you made a donation, thank you so much. A couple things you can do if you can't donate. Go just hit the subscribe button or just hit the like button, okay? Those are easy and free. You also can go to chriscillizza.substack.com and you can subscribe there. You can be a free subscriber there, just like on YouTube. Free subscriber supports me, and then maybe down the road you decide to become a paid subscriber. That would be awesome too. So anything you can do to support independent news creators, myself and others, I hope you do. I think independent news matters now more than ever before. I think it is where you're going to get the real straight dope, the real story of what's going on behind the story. And thank you for your support. Have a wonderful weekend and take good care.